Hello and welcome or welcome back. On today's podcast of Murder Chronicles, I will take you through the case of Emma Wakinia and Eid Mustafa. The two were never involved in a romantic relationship. However, their families were friends. This means they were no strangers with one another and were well acquainted. But as time went by, Mustafa would develop intimate feelings towards Emma, and finally he would let her know how he felt. Emma was very honest from the beginning, letting him know that she did not share the same feelings, and so she wanted nothing romantic between them. Sadly, this would not be the end of the story. Mustafa started acting with too much obsession, stalking Emma everywhere she went. And the more he acted with this kind of obsession, the more Emma dejected him. Mustafa finally became desperate, and he would orchestrate something so sinister that would cost the life of an innocent young woman. Does this feel like true crime to you? And are you a true crime junkie like me? Then if that's the case, stick around for the full details. Emma Wakinia Wanyota was born on the 16th of January 1998. She had a twin sister, two elder brothers, and another elder sister. Her family grew in Uasin Gishu County, but sadly, their father had passed a few years ago back in the year 2004, when she and the twin sister were only 4 years old. From then, the family was under the care of their mother, Beatrice Luceno. However, the mother turned out to be very responsible even after the father's death. She worked her breath out to provide her family with their needs. She ensured that Emma's dreams also got fulfilled, and so she supported her in joining the beauty industry. Emma studied at Vera Beauty College in Eldoret Town Branch. Emma was a creative soul with a deep passion for beauty and design, which she channeled into both her academic pursuits and personal interest. She approached her studies with enthusiasm, constantly seeking to understand the finer details of design principles, color theory, and aesthetics. Her love for beauty tools was evident in her careful exploration of the latest products, always eager to experiment and discover how each tool could enhance her craft. Whether it was makeup brushes, skincare gadgets, or design software, she valued the precision and artistry that these tools brought to her creative expression. Her passion drove her to constantly learn and innovate, making her not only a student, but an aspiring expert in her field. Her enthusiasm for beauty was beyond just appearance. It was about the art of transformation and how design, both in cosmetics and in broader context, could empower people and inspire change, especially for her family. Emma was a 21-year-old final year student at the Vera Beauty College and was meant to graduate in 4 months' time upon completing her industrial attachment. She was bubbly, outgoing, and her friends described her as kind and easily to get along with. She had a few close friends, but was much closer to her twin sister, who was studying in Kitui County, and they always gladly reunited during the holidays back at home. Eid Mustafa was a 31-year-old man who worked as a qualified and well-established carpenter across Kitale, Eldoret, and areas beyond. His family was friends with that of Emma for many years, even before Emma's father had passed. Mustafa was no stranger to the family, and the two families were well aware that he always liked Emma. His family lived close to that of Emma, only 3 kilometers away, and so they were well acquainted with each other. He was also the frequent provider of furniture for Emma's family and would pay frequent visits to the family. He would help Emma's family with different kinds of repair on woodwork, both inside the houses or around the compound. Sadly, none among the family members was aware that A dark cloud that would end up so tragically was slowly brewing behind the curtains. Around August 2018, chilling details surfaced. It was learned that Mustafa had been arrested and charged at Kitale Law Court, facing murder charges of Nancy Narogoi, a lady who died in his hands through strangulation. It was discovered that Mustafa had killed Nancy on the 25th of July in Kapkoi village in Kiminini sub-county area. As the investigations took course, another arrest warrant for Mustafa was given after it was allegedly suspected that he had killed another female victim in Mombasa town 2 years ago, that is in 2015. In 2017, he was arraigned in court over Nancy's killing, but was later released under mysterious condition on a 1 million Kenyan shillings bond. The case was ongoing, and so Mustafa gave out a title to a piece of land to stand as the deed of release. His family was not aware of this, and this was a shock to them. This also surprised Nancy's family after learning of his freedom. They tried to seek for answers for his release, but all went futile until they gave up. A few months after Mustafa's release, the community suffered the consequences for the release of such a villain, allowing him to live within civilized people. Moi's Bridge community would suffer for the fatal mistake the Kenya's judicial system had committed. While in the area, Mustafa's interest towards Emma began to escalate. He began showing too much interest and expressing his need for dating her. His advancements increased and Emma decided to open up with him. She had even begun to feel unsafe due to his obsessive expression, until she finally told him that she was not interested in the relationship. Mustafa did not take rejection so nicely. He even in one occasion uploaded a post on Facebook, expressing his disappointment. Mustafa was getting out of hand, stalking Emma and calling her with anonymous cell phone lines. She was getting fed up with his moves, and she would go ahead and block his numbers. But the more she blocked, the more he acquired new SIM cards, which he used to reach out to her. The man started following her around and she could spot him from everywhere she went. She began feeling very uncomfortable, to a point where she started opening up to people about his obsessive behavior. Mustafa took his obsessiveness to the next level and updated his Facebook profile name as Mustafa Makinia, taking Emma's last name. Was that not psychotic? On top of that, Mustafa could always download photos from Emma's Facebook account and then repost them on his own account. This forced Emma to delete her account and opened a new one. 1 month before Emma's killing, Mustafa took a very desperate move. He went over to Emma's school and waited for her by the gate. Emma was coming from class and would find Mustafa waiting for her there. The moment he started making his advancements towards her, Emma quickly rejected him and reminded him that she wanted nothing romantic between them. This made Mustafa so angry, and so he snatched her phone and took off. Emma quickly walked back to school and informed the matter to the administration, who did nothing about it anyway. Once Mustafa was with Emma's phone, he went through the contact list and started threatening the male contacts, telling them to stay away from Emma. Emma was feeling so uncomfortable and unsafe at the same time, fearing for her life, and so when she went back home, she informed her mother about Mustafa's harassment. Emma's mom quickly called Mustafa's mother to inform her about her son's behavior, and above that, she wanted to speak to Mustafa in person, and so she summoned for him. The following day, Mustafa came over to Emma's house, and there he would obviously find Emma's mom and Emma. And so after he was confronted by Emma's mother, he apologized and promised that he would not repeat his behavior. However, this was just the beginning of a much more sinister move, a dark cloud that was about to fall upon Emma's family. September 30th, 2019. An ordinary evening when the streets were quiet and the sun not yet dipped below the horizon, a horrific crime shattered the calm. A man, Mustafa, whose presence in the town had always been a familiar face, would execute the most sinister plan, which would leave the entire community bleeding. His action left people haunted in disbelief over the coming years. Mustafa's determination was obvious, but heinous. It was a day he orchestrated to take revenge on her for her constant rejection. His resentment and bitterness could not hold any longer, and he could not wait for darkness to settle. He walked at Emma's compound, still with the sun kissing the earth. Being a person who was acquainted to this homestead, he was 100% sure that Emma's mom would be away and that Emma would be alone. And as well known, he found her alone. She was relaxing in the sitting room. Without a word, the man began to beat her up. Taking Emma through a wave of brutality, he assaulted her intimately, strangled and finally hit her head with a blunt object. Like that was not vicious enough, he mutilated her body by dismembering the parts, which he later dumped in a neighboring Napier grass farm. Emma sadly died at the place where she called home, her very sanctuary of safety. Beatrice later returned home before darkness covered the horizon. Everything felt like a horror film. Upon arriving home, she was met by blood inside of the living room. She started the compound quickly and could spot a trail of blood which she followed. It led her to Emma. She lay in a pool of blood beneath her cold and motionless body. The mother was caught in shock, suffering a deep wound that no amount of time could ever mend. The news of the attack spread quickly, and so Mustafa stood as the only main suspect. He was swiftly arrested. During his capture, he was found in possession of Emma's backpack, which contained her phone and a laptop. Legal processes began. He was found to be a man carved from darkness, his eyes hollow, with the weight of secrets too monstrous to confess. The smell of death clung to him, not just from his blood-stained past he could not escape, but from the demons that had always clawed at his soul. Behind every murder, there was a twisted logic, a voice that whispered in his ear, urging him to silence the pain he felt deep inside. It wasn't just the victims he took, but pieces of his own humanity, with each life extinguished. Each kill was a temporary escape, a numbness that seems to ease the suffocating pressure of his own mind, but it never lasted. It never made him feel whole. He was slipping further into the abyss, a man who had long since abandoned the hope of redemption, caught in a cycle of violence that echoed with every beat of his broken heart, a man who could not embrace rejection as a part of life. After all, we cannot be everyone's cup of tea, and now, the evidence proving his wickedness was so dense, the authorities felt the relief of having him in custody, a sadistic killer who took the lives of innocent women so selfishly. His brutality, no matter the demons he was facing, could not go unpunished. Though he remained in remand for quite some time, Mustafa finally faced judgment in November 2023. He received his sentencing. He was to serve a 45-year jail time without possibilities of parole.
Execute death penalties. It does exist in the statute, but in terms of execution, there is less action by the president in the executive to then make orders of execution of death penalties. And for that reason, then I don't want to give a death penalty in vain. So for that matter, taking the heinous manner in which this crime was committed, I sentence you for 45 years custodial sentence, and I've taken into account that this was a murder so heinous, which is motivated by hatred, ill will, and with a motive to commit this particular crime without due regard to the right to life.
The case of Mustafa, whose hands were stained with blood of Emma and Nancy, ended in a harsh yet predictable sentence: 45 years in prison. Justice, though delivered in full force, did little to heal the wound he left behind. The families of the victims were left to pick up the shattered pieces of their lives, a task far more insidious than any prison term could ever hope to mend. Emma's family, especially her mother, was thrust into an abyss of grief so deep it threatened to consume them entirely. Every memory of their daughter now came with a searing reminder of how she had been taken violently and without mercy. Nancy's family, too, was left in ruins. The emotional scar ran deep, and the psychological toll proved far more lasting than any legal punishment. Therapy sessions, sleepless nights, and fractured relationships became their new reality. In the silence of their homes, they fought the constant war within themselves, anger, confusion, and a deep feeling of frustration. The release of Mustafa after his first killing is a glaring indictment of the Kenyan judicial system's failure to deliver justice, especially in cases of violence against women. His release after the first murder, under circumstances that remain unclear, signals a disturbing breakdown in the legal framework meant to protect the vulnerable. Mustafa's actions were not the result of a momentary lapse in judgment or a one-time incident. They are the beginning of a tragic pattern that escalated with the killing of Emma and Nancy. The fact that he was allowed to walk free after the first reflects a serious lack of thorough investigation and, more critically, a failure to assess the danger he posed to society. This oversight reveals deep flaws within the judicial process, particularly in how the system handles cases of violence. Had Mustafa faced appropriate consequences after the first murder, the life of Emma could have been spared, and the subsequent trauma to their family might have been avoided. The judicial system's failure to properly assess the risk of releasing a known killer demonstrates a chilling disregard for public safety and the well-being of citizens. It also highlights a large issue with Kenya's judicial system, where leniency and oversight seem to take precedence over urgent need to protect vulnerable individuals, particularly women. Furthermore, the lack of a comprehensive psychological and social evaluation of Mustafa after his initial crime is a glaring shortcoming. Without addressing his mental state and the underlying factors that contributed to his violent behavior, the justice system essentially set the stage for further bloodshed. The victims' families are left to grapple not only with the profound emotional and psychological scars of losing loved ones, but also the frustrations that a broken system allowed the cycle of violence to continue. Mustafa's release, followed by his deadly escalation, serves as a stark reminder of the Kenyan judicial system's failure to ensure that justice is both served and upheld. The consequences of this failure are borne not only by the victims, but by society as a whole. And that is the case of Emma and Mustafa. And thank you so much for sticking around. And in the meantime, please consider subscribing. I will see you in the next one.